I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get blindsided like this. Honestly, I thought I knew us until I saw the text. It was late at night and I'd just come home from a long day at work, exhausted but happy to finally relax. The apartment was quiet. Her phone was on the coffee table, screen lit up in a way that made my stomach tight. I usually wouldn't look, but something about that glow caught my eye. The message was from her boss, Mark. I'd never liked him, always sensed he had an edge, but I brushed it off as workplace tension. I should have known better. The message was something like, "Can't wait to see you tonight," followed by a smiley face. That alone didn't scream anything overtly wrong, but the timing, the late hour, the secrecy, something felt off immediately. I reached for the phone without thinking, my fingers trembling as I unlocked it. The notification was still open. I saw the last few texts. My heart rate kicked up, pounding hard enough I could feel it in my ears. It was worse than I expected. They'd been texting every day, talking about meetings, jokes, plans for later. I kept scrolling and the messages got more personal, flirtatious, a little too much. Things like, "Can't wait to be alone with you," and "Tonight, going to be perfect." They never once mentioned me. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My stomach sank and my palms grew clammy. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, but instead just sat there, frozen. I kept staring at her phone, replaying that conversation in my head. Then I saw it, the photos. There were a few, but one made my blood run cold. It was her, topless in his bed, smiling like she'd hit the jackpot. It wasn't just a drunken slip or a passing fling. She looked happy, too damn happy. The kind of happiness you only get when you're doing something you know you shouldn't be. I hadn't seen her like that in a long time. I don't remember how long I stared at that picture. It could have been minutes or hours. It all blurred into a sick haze. My hands felt numb, like I was holding someone else's body. I needed proof, something concrete, so I looked around the apartment. That's when I found the condom wrapper behind the couch, crumpled up and discarded like trash. I'd been blind, but that was the confirmation I needed. She'd been sneaking around, lying to my face while I planned our wedding. The thought made my stomach twist so hard I almost doubled over. The worst part, I'd been so wrapped up in trying to make us perfect, to give her the life she wanted, that I missed all the signs. She'd been distant for weeks, but I just chalked it up to stress. She'd brush me off when I tried to talk about our future. Now I see she was already halfway out the door with someone else's hands on her, a different kind of life that I'd never even suspected existed behind her pretty eyes. I stayed up that night, staring at the ceiling, feeling my chest tighten. Every breath was a struggle. I started to understand just how deep the betrayal ran. It wasn't just a quick fling or a mistake, it was months of lies. She'd been lying to me about everything, all while I was planning a wedding, talking about forever. It was like someone had taken a knife and carved out my entire trust, then twisted it. I knew I couldn't stay, not anymore, but I also knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with it, not without a price. I didn't have a clear plan yet, but I knew I'd make her regret what she'd done. I had to, because if I didn't, I'd just be another fool who got played and walked away quietly. I couldn't let her think she'd won. Not after all I'd given her or all I'd believed in. Tomorrow I'd start to act. And when I did, she'd regret every lie, every stolen moment. I was done being the guy who gets betrayed in silence. It's just a matter of time before she realizes she's made a huge mistake, and I'd be the one to make sure she remembers it forever. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind kept circling back to that photo, that message, that condom wrapper. Everything was so clear now. She'd never been honest with me. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the evidence was pretty damning. I felt a cold rage bubbling up, mixed with a sick sense of betrayal. I had to plan my next move carefully. Rushing in would only give her the upper hand or make me look crazy. I took a shower that morning, but the hot water did little to wash away the knot forming in my gut. The steam fogged the mirror and I stared at my reflection, trying to find some part of myself that wasn't shattered. My hands were still trembling from the night before. I clenched my fists. I couldn't let her see me like this, weak, hurt, unhinged. No, I had to be smart. I needed a plan. I spent the next couple of hours gathering all the evidence I had, screenshots of the messages, the condom wrapper, the photos. I wanted everything in one place so I could use it if I needed to. My mind kept racing, trying to think about what to do next. I couldn't confront her blindly. That would be a disaster. Instead, I decided I'd need leverage, something that would give me the upper hand. While I was collecting the evidence, I noticed a few things I'd missed. The way she'd been sneaking around, the little lies she'd been telling. She'd been acting distracted, avoiding me, and I'd ignored it. I'd been so busy trying to make everything perfect that I missed the warning signs. But now I saw it all clearly. She'd been planning her escape, and I was just the fool she'd been stringing along. It was time to get serious. I decided I'd need to confront her, but not just with words. I wanted her off guard, make her realize I knew everything. That's when I remembered that her boss, Mark, was always around her. I'd been sitting on some damning information about him, too. I'd uncovered that he'd been pushing her for more than just professional favors, more than a boss-employee relationship. If I played my cards right, I could use that to my advantage. I made a quick call to a private investigator, gave him a list of what I needed: photos, recordings, anything that could prove their affair beyond the texts. I told him to keep it discreet. I wanted the proof to hit her like a ton of bricks, to show her I wasn't messing around. I also bought a small voice recorder, just in case I needed to catch her in the act or get a confession. I felt my palms sweat. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was about destroying her lie and reclaiming my dignity. While waiting for the investigator's report, I crafted the perfect confrontation script. I wanted her to feel like she'd been caught because she had. I didn't want to argue or yell, at least not yet. I wanted her to see that I knew everything and that I was prepared. I pictured her face, surprised, maybe even scared. I wanted her to realize that her carefully constructed facade was about to crumble. My stomach twisted every time I thought about seeing her face when I revealed what I knew. I could already feel the heat rising in my chest, a mixture of fury and betrayal. I knew I needed to keep my cool, but that was easier said than done. I had to be cold, calculated, and precise. I couldn't afford to lose control. At some point, I caught myself staring at her empty side of the bed, feeling the weight of everything I'd lost. The future I'd planned, the trust I'd given her, gone in a flash. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about making sure she understood she'd crossed a line from which there was no return. I was done being the fool. Now, sitting in my apartment, waiting for the investigator's report, I felt a strange calm. The storm was coming. I was ready to rip the mask off her face. When the truth was finally out, she'd know exactly who she'd messed with, and I'd make damn sure she'd regret it. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, and I was determined to see it through. When the investigator finally called me back, I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I gripped the phone tightly, almost afraid of what I'd hear. He sounded calm but deliberate, like he'd seen enough to draw conclusions. "I've got everything you asked for," he said. "Photos, recordings, and some background info. Looks like she's been seeing him for about 5 months. They've been sneaking out, meeting at different hotels, and she's been lying to you this entire time." I swallowed hard, feeling the anger boiling up inside me. "Show me everything," I told him. I wanted to see her face, see her get caught. When I got the files, I spent the next hour poring over the evidence. The photos were worse than I imagined, her lips pressed against his neck, her hands clutching his jacket, her eyes closed like she was in some kind of trance. The recordings caught snippets of their conversations, her whispering promises, him coaxing her, calling her beautiful after everything they'd done. I felt my stomach turn. I'd been planning how to confront her all morning, but now that I had this, I knew I had to do it soon. There was no way I could wait another second. I needed her to see that I knew everything, that I had the proof, that her lies were over. I decided to do it that night. I wanted her to come home expecting another boring dinner, another fake smile, and instead I'd blow her entire world apart. I set the stage. I'd pretend I didn't know much, just enough to make her sweat, then unleash everything. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her betrayal, every betrayal, crash down on her in that moment. Before she got home, I prepared the apartment. I moved the evidence into a neat folder, placed the recordings on my laptop, and set up my phone to record her reactions. I wanted everything captured, her face, her voice, her lies. I also cleared the room, made sure I was calm, and waited for her to walk through that door. When she did, the scent hit me, a faint floral perfume mixed with something else, something that reminded me of long nights filled with betrayal. I felt my jaw tight. She looked tired and jittery, like she knew she'd done something wrong but wasn't ready for the fallout. "Hey," she said softly, dropping her bag. "Did you miss me?" Her voice was shaky, and I saw her eyes flicker to my face, searching for some sign of weakness. "No," I said coldly, "but I saw your little messages and pictures. Care to explain?" Without waiting, I turned my laptop around so she could see the evidence. Her face paled instantly. Her eyes widened as she saw the photos, the recordings, the proof I'd collected. Her mouth opened, but no words came out at first. Only the sound of her breathing, uneven and shallow. "Look," I said, voice steady but dripping with fury, "I trusted you. I wanted to build a future with you. And you've been cheating on me with your boss, haven't you?" She tried to deny it, but the words sounded hollow, weak. She fumbled for an excuse, but I cut her off. "Save it. The only thing I want to know is asterisk why. Why lie to me for months while I was planning a wedding?" Her face crumpled, and for a moment she looked genuinely scared. Then she started crying, not the quiet, controlled tears, but the kind that come out hot and messy. "It didn't mean anything," she whispered, voice trembling. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen." "Liar," I snapped. "You think I'm stupid? I saw the pictures. I heard the recordings. You think I don't know what you've been doing? How long have you been lying? How long have you been lying to my face?" She looked down, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was stupid. I thought I could do better, I guess. I didn't want to hurt you, but I did. I'm sorry, sorry." That word made me want to vomit. Sorry doesn't fix betrayal. Sorry doesn't undo months of lies, months of planning my entire future around a woman who was already gone. I clenched my fists, feeling the rage rise again. "You're not sorry," I said quietly. "You're just a coward who couldn't face the truth. Well, I've had enough. I want you out of my life." I reached over, grabbing the keys from the counter, and tossed them onto the table. "You're done. Don't come back, ever." She looked at me, desperately trying to find some shred of hope, but I was already walking away. I knew this wasn't just about ending a relationship. It was about making her realize she'd crossed a line from which she couldn't come back. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices. I wanted her to understand that betrayal has consequences, real ones. As I watched her leave, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd finally taken control. I'd exposed her lie, and now I was free. But the pain was real, and I knew it would stay with me for a long time. Still, I'd rather face that pain than live in the shadow of her lies. I already knew the kind of person she was, the kind who'd cheat, lie, and then cry her way out of the mess. And that was just the beginning. After she left, I stood there for a long moment, watching the door close behind her. The apartment suddenly felt emptier than it ever had before. The silence was deafening, but inside, my head was roaring with 1,000 thoughts. I felt the adrenaline from the confrontation slowly start to fade, replaced by a gnawing sense of emptiness. For a second, I wondered if I'd gone too far, if I'd let the anger turn me into someone I didn't recognize. But then I remembered her face, that look of shock and guilt. She'd earned it. I knew I couldn't just walk away from this, not without doing something to make sure she felt the full impact of what she'd lost. I wasn't the kind of guy to just cry and move on. No, I needed to make her regret her choices, not just for my sake, but for my dignity. I began to craft a plan, something surgical, something that would leave her no room to deny or escape. First, I decided to call her boss, Mark. Not directly, but I had my ways. I contacted an old friend who knew how to handle people like him, someone who could dig up dirt without raising suspicion. I wanted Mark to realize that I wasn't just a naive guy who got played. I wanted him to see the damage I'd do if pushed, to understand that I wasn't someone he could manipulate. I didn't want to just ruin her. I wanted to ruin him too. Next, I went through her social media accounts. I knew she'd try to cover her tracks, but I was determined to find anything I could use. The habit of lying was ingrained now. I knew she'd be cautious, but I wasn't going to give her a free pass. I found some messages she'd forgotten to delete. Small things, flirty comments on her Instagram, a few private messages with colleagues. Nothing too damning on their own, but combined with the evidence I already had, they painted a clear picture. I also planted a little bug in her phone, just a tiny voice recorder app I installed when she wasn't looking. I wanted to catch her in her own words again, maybe get her to slip up, or even better, record her trying to lie her way out of what. I knew. The idea of her trying to deny everything to spin some kind of story made me want to laugh. I knew her tricks. I'd seen her manipulate before. Now I'd have it all on tape. While waiting for the recordings to come in, I took some time to breathe. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, calculated resolve. I wasn't going to let her walk away and pretend nothing happened. I wanted her to see that her betrayal had consequences, that it wasn't just going to blow over. I'd make damn sure she remembered me as the guy who fought back, who didn't just roll over and accept being cheated on like some fool. I started to think about what I'd say if she tried to come back, or if she called me later. I knew from experience that she'd try to spin some story, cry her way out of trouble, or maybe even beg for forgiveness. But I wasn't interested in her tears or pleas. I'd already made my decision. The only thing she'd get from me now was cold facts, evidence of her lies, and a clean break. I wanted her to see that I was serious enough to cut her out of my life forever if that's what it took. The recordings finally came through in the early evening. I sat alone on the couch, headphones in, listening to her voice. Her words, her tone, every detail that confirmed what I already knew made my stomach churn. She was trying to deny everything, but her voice betrayed her. She was panicked, defensive, trying to cover her tracks. Just hearing her deny it all made me want to scream. I pressed stop and stared at the wall, feeling the weight of it all settle on my shoulders. That night I drafted a final message, something brief but firm. I texted her, "It's over. Don't bother trying to contact me, I'm done." No explanations, no begging, just the cold truth. If she wanted to lie, she could, but she knew I had the evidence. I knew I had to make it clear this wasn't a mistake, it was a choice she made. The next step was simple. I handed over the evidence to a lawyer, asked her to send a formal letter of breakup, and took the necessary steps to end everything legally. I felt a strange sense of relief as I did, like I'd finally taken control. I was done being the victim. From now on, I'd rebuild on my own terms with whoever deserved my trust. I never wanted to see her again, but I knew I'd be better off without her. The betrayal cut deep, but it also made me realize my own strength. I'll never be that naive guy again. And honestly, I don't regret the revenge. I just wish I'd seen her for what she was sooner. Now I'm just waiting for her to try and come back, but I won't answer. That chapter is closed. The only thing left is to move forward. A few days after I sent the message, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. It was like finally ripping off a bandage that had been painfully stuck to my skin for months. The house was silent, but the weight of her absence lingered. I kept replaying everything. The lies, the sneaking around, the way she'd looked at me while she lied. It was a slow process, but I started to see my life without her, piece by piece, reconstructing the parts she'd shattered. I knew I had to do something definitive, something that would make her understand I wasn't just hurt, I was done. I didn't want her to think she could come back, apologize, and all would be forgiven. Never again. That's when I decided to take one final step. I had to make sure she understood that I'd fought back, that I'd turned her lies into her worst nightmare. My plan was simple but effective. I set up an anonymous email account, one she couldn't trace back to me. I gathered everything I had, photos, recordings, her messages, and uploaded them. I crafted an email addressed to her, just one message, but it contained the complete truth. No sugarcoating, no apologies, just raw facts. I wanted her to realize what kind of person she'd lost, and that I wasn't going to be one of those guys who just walks away quietly. I wanted her to see that she'd pushed me to the edge, and I'd pushed right back. The email read, "You thought you could cheat and lie your way out of this, didn't you? Well, hear what you've been hiding. I hope it was worth it because I'm done pretending I didn't know. You're the one who lost everything, my trust, my respect, and the love I had for you. You're never going to get it back, and I hope you realize that every day." I hit send and watched the clock. Then I waited. I knew she'd get it, and I wanted her to read it when she was alone. I wanted her to sit with that knowledge, knowing I had all her secrets, her lies, her betrayal in my hands. Because that's what revenge really is, showing someone they're not invincible, that their actions have consequences. Over the next few hours, I kept busy with some workout trying to clear my mind. But I kept checking my phone, waiting for her reaction. Nothing came right away. Maybe she was too stunned, or maybe she was trying to come up with some kind of response. I didn't care. I already knew she'd be devastated. That's what I wanted, to shake her up, to make her realize she had no control anymore. Then around midnight, her reply finally came. It was a long, tearful message, full of apologies and regret. She begged me to forgive her, promised she'd change, that she loved me and that it was all a terrible mistake. But I just shook my head. I wasn't interested in her tears or her apologies. She'd already lost me completely. Her words just confirmed what I already knew. She was trying to manipulate her way back into my life, but it was too late. I responded briefly just to make sure she understood. You lost me the day you decided to lie and cheat. Don't contact me again. That was it. I didn't want to hear her voice, see her face, or get swayed by her tears. I'd made my choice. I was cutting her out of my life, clean and final. That night, I felt a strange sense of closure. I'd done everything I could to make her see the damage she'd caused. I'd used her own secrets against her, and she'd failed to stop me. It wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I knew I'd be better off without her, and I was ready to start over, no matter how painful it was. Looking back now, I realize that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to understand your worth. This was mine, and I don't regret fighting back. If anything, I wish I'd seen her for what she was sooner, but better late than never. I learned the hard way that betrayal isn't just about lying, it's about the destruction of trust, and once that trust is gone, there's no coming back. And I was done waiting for a sorry that never truly came. The days that followed felt like a heavy fog finally lifting. I handed over the keys, took out the last of her belongings, and watched her walk out of the apartment that once felt like home. She looked defeated, eyes red, shoulders slumped, as if she knew her lies had caught up with her. The silence that replaced her presence was deafening but oddly peaceful. For the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling the weight of her betrayal pressing down on my chest. I remember standing there in the doorway, watching her disappear down the hall and feeling a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. My hands trembled as I handed her the final box of her things, my heart pounding in my ears. I'd already taken every step I needed, filed the paperwork, changed the locks, blocked her number. There was a strange finality to it all that made me realize I'd taken back control of my life. As she walked away, I felt an overwhelming sense of closure. I'd exposed her lies, confronted her with the truth, and now I had nothing left to say. She was gone, and I was finally free of the chaos she'd brought into my life. That's when I made a decision. I'd never let her hurt me again. I knew I needed to focus on myself now, to rebuild what was broken. In the days that followed, I started to pick up the pieces. I threw myself into work, hit the gym harder, and reconnected with friends I'd drifted from. Time helped dull the sharp edges of pain, but I knew one thing for sure. I'd never forget the betrayal, but I'd use it as fuel to move forward. Every ache, every moment of anger reminded me that I was capable of surviving what she threw at me and coming out stronger. Looking back, I realize I was lucky. Lucky I saw the signs before things got worse. Lucky I had the strength to fight back the way I did, and lucky I didn't let her define me. I learned a hard lesson about trust, about deception, and about myself. It's not easy to rebuild after such a betrayal, but I know now that I'm better off without her. My worth isn't tied to someone who lied and cheated behind my back. So here's what I want to say to anyone out there who's going through something similar. Trust your gut. Don't ignore the red flags, no matter how much you love someone. When the signs are there, act, because waiting too long only makes the pain worse. And when you finally face the truth, don't be afraid to fight your way out. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to realize your own strength. I won't pretend it's easy. The heartbreak still lingers and the emptiness can be suffocating. But I know one thing, this pain is temporary and better days are ahead. I've reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my peace of mind. And that's worth more than any lie she ever told me.